Hello and welcome back to Picture Contraptions. Today we're counting down my top 5 issues with trailer sailors. First off, in this video we need to clarify what I mean by a trailer sailor. A trailer sailor, in my definition book, is anything that readily fits on a trailer, like this McGregor 17, and then is taken to the launch on a regular basis, unloaded from that said trailer, and sailed on a lake, then loaded on the trailer and taken back. I'm not referring to massive boats where you routinely just pull it out for the winter, bring it somewhere, and then put it back after you're done sailing it. Or what I consider a sailing dinghy, like my Sea Snark, where you can throw it into the back of the truck, take it somewhere, pull it out of the back of the truck, and then sail it. I'm talking about something fairly substantial that you sail from a trailer on a regular basis. The first issue with trailer sailors is it takes a lot more time than expected to actually get them on the water. Let's face it, in order to get this McGregor 17 on the water, the first thing I have to do is deal with the unexpected. For example, this boat spends its entire life outside. That means an animal can get in there and chew up my ropes. Mold can grow on the boat without me knowing about it because maybe I've been busy that month. And all of a sudden the boat's got some water on it, it gets moldy, I have to clean that off real quick. Sometimes I've come out here and I've found that leaves have plugged up my drain plug, the boat's filled with water, gotten into the cabin, I gotta pump the water out. And even if I keep up on all of that, I still have to make sure all the lines and the sails and everything that I can't keep in the boat have to make it into whatever vehicle I'm towing the boat with. And that normally takes at least an hour, sometimes as much as 2 hours, to get the boat hooked to the vehicle to tow somewhere. Then you take the boat to the launch. You have to set the boat up at the launch, which takes another, at minimum for this boat, a half hour of setup time, sometimes 45 minutes, depending on who's with you, and if you get chatting with somebody along the way, which, let's face it, at a small lake, you've got people who will come up to you and chat with you about sailboats that they used to have or whatever all the time, which is a ton of fun, but it does add to your setup time because now you've got people coming up to you. So I normally spend about 45 minutes at the lake just setting up before I'm actually in the water. So right now we're at about 3 hours and I'm just getting in the water. Then when you're done sailing, you have to take the boat out of the water and break it all down. This normally goes a little bit quicker, about a half hour. You've got to drop the mast and everything, load the vehicle back up. Sometimes you're in a hurry and you just throw stuff into the vehicle, but you get that done in another half hour. So now you're at about 3 hours actually, because you've got 2 hours in prep work, half hour setup time, half hour takedown time. Then you get back to your house. You have to unload everything from your vehicle. If it's wet, you got to dry it out. For example, if the sail slipped into the water, you got to take it out of its bag, dry it out, make sure it's all good, pack it up. So that takes another hour. So you're at about 4 hours on average of not being in the boat sailing, just to go sailing with a basic trailer sailor like this. So the second issue I have with trailer sailors is the weather. Now there are two types of weather. There's the weather that you deal with on a day-to-day basis, which may not line up with the weekend. A lot of times I've had my boat all ready to go on a Friday night, only to find out that Saturday the weather's changed and it's completely calm, and I've wasted all that setup time on my boat. Last year I set up the boat about 5 times and had to just unhook it and unload everything the next day because the weather was completely wrong. There just was no wind at all, or it was raining and the forecast was just completely bad, or I had an unexpected event come up and this boat just had to sit. And it absolutely stinks when that happens, but it's going to happen, and it's going to happen about half the time from my experience where I'm at. Now, the other weather that I'm talking about is just your weather in the general area where you're at. For example, I live inland. I'm not especially close to any lakes in the Midwest, so I always have to drive somewhere to get this boat in the water. I'm not by like Lake Michigan directly, where there's almost always an offshore breeze. So that's something to think about. It's just, what's the general weather in your area? Do you have consistent winds between like 7 and 10 miles an hour? or 10 and 15 miles an hour that you can actually go out and use a trailer sailor. You may be in an area where you've got a lake, but your area just doesn't have consistent winds. And that's what I've been finding is a lot of the weekends around where I'm at just haven't been good for sailing in general. So I haven't used the boat as much as I thought I would use this type of boat. The third issue I've bumped into with trailer sailors is propulsion. Let's face it, these boats aren't big boats. They don't have a built-in engine with a below-board propeller system. And if you're buying one of these like me, you're probably on a budget of some kind. So you're trying to figure out, how do you propel this? Now, I didn't really think about this issue because I'm used to dinghies like my Sea Shark, where I can just use a kayak paddle to take it out to where the wind is. The problem is with a day sailor, these things are big. They catch the wind. If the wind's the wrong direction, you get blown backwards. So you need some type of reliable power source. Now in this boat, I have oars, which I haven't quite hooked up yet. And I've got regular paddles on the inside of it because my outboard that I had has proven to be semi-reliable. And the other option, a trolling motor, doesn't necessarily have a guaranteed output of power that's going to overdo the wind. So this is something that you've got to think about, is you may buy a day sailor that looks like a beautiful boat, but if you don't have a decent outboard on that, or a way that you're going to power it to get out of the fishing dock that's completely in the wrong spot for a sailboat, you might not actually make it to where the wind is, because the people that put in boat docks don't necessarily think about sailboats anymore. They think about the fishing boat guy who could just back out of there with his 50-horse motor, turn around and go off into the lake. So odds are that boat dock that you want to use is completely in the wrong spot for a sailboat. Or in some cases, I've had it where the boat dock's in a decent spot, but happens to be so shallow going out that you're afraid to raise your sails because you can't drop your keel in the water. So if you raise your sails, you're going to tip over. So in general, you need to have some way to propel the boat that's reliable and strong, and that may cost you a bunch of money that you didn't have in the budget just to make sure that you can get out to a spot that you can sail on the lake. Fourth issue with trailer sailors is that they're trailer sailors. Let's face it, you've got to deal with the trailer itself, which in my case, this trailer needed new tires right off the bat. That's $200. Needed a new winch, another $50. And then I had to add these guide poles that ran another $30. So I was out about $300 in extras right off the bat. Then the part that most people and myself did not think about, I have to deal with a vehicle that tows said trailer. Now, I've had horrible luck with vehicles recently, I'll admit, but it has influenced how much I can actually take this out on the water. I've had 3 different vehicles tow this. The first one was a 2-wheel drive truck, and that truck happened to hit black ice, spin out, and break its rear axle. So I was out of vehicle for a couple of months and could not tow this boat when it came springtime. But the thing I learned with that vehicle was that when you're pulling out of the water with a 2-wheel drive, it will skid on some ramps. Not all ramps, but on some of them, and it's scary when it does. The second vehicle I had was a 4x4 truck, which worked great for pulling, tons of power, pulled out of the ramps just fine. But the engine blew up on it. That meant I couldn't go sailing for another couple of months. Then I had to get a third vehicle, which fortunately I had one available. I put a hitch on it, and that one was front wheel drive, and I was able to tow this boat out to a couple more launches. But all that to say, if you don't have a reliable tow vehicle, your boat is going to sit a lot more than you think it's going to sit. And it may be because of no fault of your own, just because it's a trailer sailor. You can't just throw it on top of any old car and take it down to the launch like a dinghy. It just isn't that way. It's gotta have a trailer, and you gotta have something to tow that trailer.
Is that a good one? I can't tell.
The fifth issue I have with trailer sailors is that they're big enough to make you want to go somewhere that they're not necessarily equipped to go. What I mean by that is this sailboat is phenomenal. It feels like a much bigger boat. And on a smaller lake, it seems like a bigger boat. You're passing kayaks and smaller boats, and you really feel like, wow, I dwarf sea snarks, I dwarf butterflies, I can go anywhere. But in reality, it's still a 17-foot boat. It's not gonna go handle Lake Michigan. And in a lot of cases, your trailer sailors aren't something where you wanna go out too far from shore and go to a far off destination. They're just not gonna be comfortable for it. Now, I've been out on boats that are docked boats, like 31-foot boats. Those are beautiful out on the bigger lakes. You can take those from one port to the next. But on a small boat like this, it's gonna make you wanna do that, especially with the inside cockpit, but you're not actually going to be able to necessarily do it safely. And that brings me to another point. Trailer sailors in general, should you have one with an enclosed bow like this? Well, that's one of the things that I kind of regret on this particular boat. You see, this boat has the ability to sleep on it. The problem is none of my local lakes allow me to do that. So a lot of the space on this boat that's taken up by that forward cockpit is not actually usable. So you might be better off looking at a trailer sailor that's got a lot more seating space and not necessarily has the bunks on the inside of it. There you go. Those are my 5 points, and hopefully they help you out think about some things that you haven't thought about before. If you haven't seen the video on my Sea Snark, which is kind of a sailing dinghy, I highly recommend watching that. It's a great video. And also, I've got a full review of this McGregor 17. All the things I like and don't like about it are in that video. Have a fantastic day. Patriot Contraptions, signing out.